I used to be someone. Not in the way people throw that phrase around, like they're recalling a faded glory. I mean, I was someone, Corporal Nathaniel Nate Carter, 82nd Airborne Division. Afghanistan, 3 tours, a brother, a husband, a father. I wore those roles like armor once. Now, I carry them like chains. The courtroom smells of polished oak, dry paper, and stale cologne. There's a sharp tension in the air, like a violin string pulled too tight. I'm sitting here in a borrowed suit that doesn't fit, my ankles chafed by shackles, hands resting in my lap like they've forgotten how to salute, how to fight, how to hold on. They say I assaulted a police officer. I say I was trying to breathe. Before all this, I was a ghost roaming street corners and underpasses, muttering war songs to indifferent shadows. No one cared who I used to be. I was a black man with a 1,000-yard stare and combat boots worn, thin by memory. I slept in alleys with brick walls for headboards, my rucksack stuffed with folded flags and unpaid hospital bills. But you're not here to hear about the fall. You're here to understand the moment everything snapped. The moment. I stood before the law not as a statistic, but as a story they couldn't ignore. It started 3 weeks ago. Rain clung to the streets like regret, coating everything in a sheen of melancholy. I was curled beneath the Jefferson Bridge, where the wind howled like wounded wolves. I'd been sick for days, lungs rattling, body burning. No one stops for a shivering black man talking to ghosts. Not in this city. Not in any. Then came Officer Langston. Young, clean-shaven, all sharp edges and polished badge. He didn't know me. Didn't recognize the limp that came from shrapnel buried in my thigh. He didn't see the scars from surgeries done too late in underfunded VA clinics. "Move it along, old man," he'd barked. I didn't answer. Not out of defiance. I just didn't have the strength. He yanked my arm. I stumbled. Instincts took over. Reflexes honed in dusty hellscapes halfway around the world. I grabbed his wrist, twisted, stepped back. Didn't hurt him. Didn't even think. The world had collapsed into chaos, and I responded like I was trained to. That was enough. He called for backup. Within minutes, I was face down on cold concrete, knees digging into my back, the weight of the state pressing down harder than a Taliban ambush. They cuffed me, called me aggressive, dangerous, unstable. They never called me veteran. I wasn't given a phone call, just a cot in a holding cell that smelled like bleach and broken lives. I don't remember how long I was there. Days? Hours? Time stopped meaning anything after the First War. Then came her Miranda Knox, public defender. Hair like wildfire, eyes like thunderclouds. She didn't look at me like I was a case file. She looked at me like I was real. She slid a folder across the table and said, "They're charging you with felony assault. You could do 10 years, I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was expected. I served 9 overseas, I muttered. What's 10 more in a cage? But she didn't flinch. You have a chance, Nate. The judge, Judge Holloway, he's different. He listens. Judges don't listen. They decide. She leaned closer. He's a veteran. Marines. Gulf War. Something flickered in me. Not hope, just a flicker, like a match struck in a hurricane. Now, here I sit. The trial begins in an hour. I glance around the courtroom. Polished shoes. Whispers behind clipboards. A bailiff who won't meet my eye. Everyone dressed like they've got somewhere to go. Afterward, somewhere warm, with dinner waiting. I close my eyes. My daughter's face swims up from the darkness. Lena. Last I saw her, she was 6, wearing a yellow dress and braids that bounced when she ran. Now she's 20, somewhere I can't reach, taught to forget the man who disappeared into combat and came back a stranger. I never meant to leave them. Not really. War just doesn't end when you come home. It follows you. It devours you. Miranda touches my shoulder. You okay? I nod. It's a lie. The judge enters. The courtroom rises, then sits. Except one man. In the back. Tall, broad-shouldered. An old army jacket. He stands at attention, eyes locked on me. One by one, more people rise. Silent. Veterans, maybe. Or strangers who saw something in the papers. Faces I don't recognize. Posture rigid, respectful, reverent. I don't understand. I don't deserve it. Then Judge Holloway speaks. Mr. Carter, before we proceed, let me say this. I know who you are. His voice is gravel wrapped in velvet. I served. I remember the names. And I remember yours. A murmur moves through the courtroom. My throat tightens. I've read your service record. Valor. Sacrifice. Leadership. You were there when Cop Keating fell. You pulled 2 men from a burning Humvee. You lost your best friend to a sniper outside Kandahar. You've paid. Debts this country can never repay. Silence. Not cold. Courtroom silence. Holy silence. The kind reserved for churches and funeral homes. I'm not here to give you pity, he continues. But you deserve dignity. Miranda squeezes my hand. I've been seen. Not as a defendant. Not as a vagrant. But as a man. I don't remember standing. Maybe Miranda helped me up. Maybe my legs acted on instinct. Like they used to when mortars started falling. Either way, I was upright when the judge looked me square in the eye. My hands still trembled, partly from nerves, partly from the medication they stopped giving me when they took me in. The courtroom watched, eyes stitched to my story like moths to flame. Judge Holloway's voice softened. We will proceed with fairness, with facts. But let the record show, this man is not invisible. I swallowed hard, felt my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. I wanted to speak, to thank him, or maybe just grunt acknowledgement, but silence sat thick in my throat, heavy as grief. The prosecutor stood, young, confident, with slicked hair and a smugness that made me itch. Your Honor, the facts remain. Mr. Carter assaulted an officer of the law during lawful engagement. His military service is commendable, but irrelevant to the crime. Miranda's chair creaked as she stood, shoulders square. Your Honor, the prosecution seeks to sever the man from his past. But his past is the context. Ignoring it would be like judging a man for yelling fire in a war zone, without knowing he's standing in a battlefield. Judge Holloway raised a hand. Counselor, I'll allow it. Context matters. The bailiff called the first witness, Officer Langston. He strode to the stand, uniform pressed like iron, gaze rigid. As he raised his right hand to swear in, I noticed a faint tremor in his fingers. Just a flicker. But I saw it. Soldiers notice that kind of thing. Langston recounted the event as if reading from a grocery list. The defendant refused to comply, with dispersal instructions. I placed a hand on his arm. He responded with aggression. Did you feel threatened? The prosecutor asked. Langston hesitated. Barely. Yes. He grabbed my wrist and attempted to twist it. Miranda stood. Officer, Were you aware Mr. Carter is a veteran with documented post-traumatic stress disorder? Objection. Sustained. She pivoted. Did he strike you? No. Did he draw a weapon? No. Did he make any verbal threats? Langston's jaw tightened. No. So, to be clear, a homeless man, seated and unarmed, responded, reflexively when touched by a uniformed officer. And in that moment, your interpretation was criminal hostility? Langston's face darkened, but he held composure. It was a judgment call. Miranda nodded. I see. One last question, officer. Do you know what a combat flashback is? Objection again. Sustained. But the word lingered. Combat flashback. Two syllables that echoed louder than a gunshot in that quiet room. We broke for lunch. I wasn't hungry. The cafeteria food tasted like cardboard and shame. Miranda sat beside me in the holding room. They're painting you as a threat, she said, sifting through papers. But people are listening. That courtroom's full for a reason. I shook my head. They're here for a spectacle. A war hero turned homeless. Feeds the papers. Maybe a movie deal if I cry on cue. She stared at me, unblinking. You think I'm here for a headline? No. You're here to win. She smiled. Damn right I am. I leaned back, exhaling slow. My thoughts drifted to Kenny. My best friend. My brother in arms. We signed up together. Died together in a way. He took the bullet. I took the guilt. I still remember the moment. Blood pooling under his helmet. His hand reaching for mine as his breath rattled out. Tell my sister I'm sorry, he whispered. Then nothing. I never found her. But I still whisper his apology into the void every year on his death day. Miranda must have seen the storm in my eyes. She changed the subject. We're calling your doctor next, the VA psychiatrist. I tensed. He stopped returning my calls. She flipped a page. He's testifying anyway, subpoenaed. His notes are brutal and honest. Good. She leaned closer. You sure you want this all laid bare? I looked down at my shackled hands. Truth is all I got left. Dr. Evelyn Sims took the stand after recess. Older black woman, tight curls, glasses low on her nose, voice like a bomb, smooth and deliberate. I treated Mr. Carter for 4 years, she said, looking directly at the jury. He suffers from severe PTSD, compounded by traumatic brain injury and prolonged exposure to combat stressors, night terrors, hypervigilance, dissociative episodes. The prosecutor leaned forward. Doctor, was he dangerous? To himself, yes, she replied. To others, only when cornered. Which, I believe, is what happened the day of the incident. Miranda stood, flipping through a binder. Dr. Sims, could you explain what a combat flashback entails? See, she nodded. In Nate's case, it involves disorientation, defensive reflexes, inability to distinguish between present and past. He's not attacking. He's surviving. Would you classify the encounter with Officer Langston as a triggering event? Absolutely. Sudden physical contact, uniformed authority figure, cold weather, hunger, sleep deprivation, all classics. Triggers. The courtroom absorbed her words like sponges to gasoline. Ready to ignite, I was the last to testify. The moment they called my name, a strange hush fell across the room. As I stood, I noticed the gallery again. Still full, still standing. A man in the third row saluted. I nodded slightly, a gesture steeped in memory. Miranda guided me to the stand. The clerk swore me in. My voice cracked slightly as I said, I do. Miranda approached gently, as if we were back. In a therapy room. Nate, she began, tell the court where you were before the incident. Sleeping. Under the bridge. Why there? No shelters had beds. Cops rousted me out of the last one. Were you expecting to be approached? I shook my head. I didn't see him coming. Do you remember what you did when he touched you? I nodded. Grabbed his wrist. Stepped back. That's all. Why? My throat burned. In the war, that movement meant death. You don't wait. You react. Silence again. The jury stared, some frowning, some glassy-eyed. She continued. What happened after? They threw me down, cuffed me, called me names. I don't remember much else. Have you ever assaulted anyone? No, ma'am. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? No, ma'am. What do you want the court to know? I paused, then spoke slowly. I didn't fight 3 wars to hurt my own people. I didn't come home to live on concrete and die forgotten. I made mistakes, but I never stopped trying to be a man my daughter could be proud of. I didn't attack that officer. I reacted to a threat I thought was there. Miranda stepped back. The prosecutor rose, clearly ready to dismantle me, but he hesitated, then said simply, no questions. That night, I sat in my cell, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks like stars. Miranda stopped by, coat still damp from rain. They'll deliberate tomorrow, she said. Could go either way. But you moved them, Nate. I saw it. I didn't answer. Just looked at her. She placed a small envelope on the table. This came for you. I opened it. Inside, a photo. Me and Kenny, back in uniform, grinning like fools in the desert sun. On the back, found this cleaning out my dad's footlocker. He always talked about you. Thank you for bringing him home. Melissa James. His sister. I choked on the air, in my throat. Who sent it? I asked. Miranda smiled faintly. The girl in the courtroom today. Second row. Blue scarf. I closed my eyes, clutching the photo like a lifeline. For the first time in years, I slept without dreams. The morning of the verdict, the world stood still. There's a kind of quiet before judgment. Before the hammer falls, the doors close, and what's left of your life gets sorted like evidence in a box. I hadn't slept much, despite the letter. The photo of Kenny had stayed beneath my pillow, creased from the grip of my fingers. I held on to that moment like it was air. Miranda came into the holding cell at dawn, coffee in one hand, a tired but knowing smile in the other. You ready? She asked. No. Good. Means you're still human. The van ride to the courthouse was longer than usual. Or maybe time just stretched itself thin, like it knew something was coming and wanted to savor the suspense. I stared out the slotted window, past the drizzle slicking the glass, watching the city trudge by. It didn't know I existed, and maybe never would. But part of me hoped that somewhere in the noise and concrete, someone remembered my name. Not because of the trial, because of the man I used to be. Courtrooms are strange places. They don't just judge actions, they weigh souls. Mine felt heavy. When I entered, the gallery was already packed, even fuller than before. Veterans in faded uniforms, young people in street clothes, elders with hands folded in prayer. And there, again, in the second row, Melissa James, Kenny's sister. Her eyes found mine. She nodded. I returned the gesture. Judge Holloway entered. The court rose. I followed the ritual like I was back on base. He sat. We did too. The bailiff called the jury. 12 faces turned toward me. One woman wore tears in her lashes like they were makeup. A man in the back fiddled with his wedding ring. They all looked like they'd aged a few years since the trial began. Maybe they had. Maybe we all had. The foreman, a middle-aged black man with a bald head and a preacher's cadence, stood. We, the jury, in the case of the state versus Nathaniel Carter, fined the defendant. The breath in my chest froze. My heart sounded like mortars in the distance. Not guilty on the charge of felony assault. A pause. My knees buckled slightly. Not guilty on resisting arrest. Another pause. Guilty of obstructing a public officer, misdemeanor level. I didn't breathe. That was it. A misdemeanor. I wasn't going back to prison. I wasn't being erased. I exhaled. I heard someone in the gallery sob. A soft murmur. Then silence. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, given time served, and the extenuating circumstances, I hereby sentence you to mandatory counseling and community service. No additional jail time. You are free to go, pending program enrollment. I didn't cry. I wanted to. My body wanted to shake, to collapse, to erupt in gratitude. But I'd learned long ago that joy is a fragile thing. You hold it carefully, like a grenade with the pin halfway out. The cuffs came off. My wrists felt naked. I turned to Miranda. She smiled, wider than ever before. I nodded. You did it, I said. She shook her head. We did. The crowd began to rise again. Not in protest, not in surprise, in respect. They stood like soldiers at reveille, like mourners at a burial, like a nation remembering its debt. Judge Holloway stood last. His voice was low but carried across the room like a hymn. Mr. Carter, the world may forget names, but not today. Outside, the sky had cleared. Sunlight filtered through clouds like redemption. I stood on the steps of the courthouse, breathing air that didn't taste of concrete or sweat or judgment. Just life. Reporters circled, but kept their distance. Maybe they saw something in my eyes. Maybe they realized this wasn't their story to twist into headlines. Miranda stood beside me. What now? She asked. I shrugged. Haven't thought that far. She pulled a card from her coat. There's a transitional housing program for vets. It's clean, safe, and they don't ask for miracles, just effort. I took the card. Studied it like a map. Think they'll take someone like me? They already did. I called ahead. She reached into her bag, pulled out a worn duffel. My duffel. Found this in evidence. Figured you'd want it back. I clutched it. Inside was everything I owned. A toothbrush, an old field manual, Kenny's photo, and Lena's last letter. The one with no return address. Thank you, I whispered. She hugged me. Brief, firm, real. Then she walked away. Just like that. No fanfare. No victory speech. Just a defender walking toward her next broken client. I wandered the city for an hour. Not aimlessly, deliberately. I needed to feel the streets again, not as a fugitive, but as a man. The air smelled different. Or maybe I did. I stopped at a payphone. Yes, those still exist if you know where to look. Dropped in some change. Dialed a number I hadn't tried. In years. I didn't expect her to pick up, but she did. Hello? Her voice. Grown now. Strong. Unmistakable. Lena, I said. Silence. Then, Dad? Yeah. She didn't hang up. I waited. I heard about the trial, she said. I wasn't sure if it was you. It's me. More silence. Then, cautiously, "Are you okay?" "I'm trying to be." She didn't speak for a moment. Then, "I'd like that. For you to try. Maybe we could talk again sometime." Tears welled, but I kept my voice steady. "I'd like that too." We didn't say goodbye. We just held the moment until it dissolved. Later that evening, I sat on a bench by the river, staring at the water as the city lights blinked on one by one. Man approached, older, leather jacket. His gait was stiff, familiar. He sat without asking. "Hell of a thing," he said. "Yeah," I replied, not looking. He offered a cigarette. I waved it off. "You were with 80 Sank and Airborne, right?" I nodded. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a patch. Same unit, worn, frayed. I was Nam, tunnel rat. Ain't got medals, just stories. Same here. He clapped my shoulder. "Glad you made it, brother. Not all of us do." He stood, shuffled away. I watched him disappear into the night. The river rolled on, and for the first time in a long time, so did I. People think freedom comes with a parade, maybe a marching band, maybe medals. But the truth is, freedom arrives quietly, like breath returning to the lungs after you've been underwater too long. It doesn't shout. It whispers. 3 days after the verdict, I moved into the transitional home Miranda found for me. Room 207. Clean walls. A narrow bed with hospital corners. A window that opened. No bars. That first night, I just stood there, one hand on the doorknob, the other clutching my duffel, trying to believe I wasn't about to be kicked out again. My mind played tricks. It always did. I half expected a guard to shout, "This ain't a shelter, Carter. Move along." But no one shouted. I stepped inside, closed the door, and sat. The mattress creaked under my weight like it hadn't held. A man in a long time. Maybe it hadn't. I unpacked slowly, ritual-like. The toothbrush, the manual, Kenny's photo, Lena's letter. A small packet of mementos I'd carried through hell and back. I pinned the photo to the corkboard above the desk. "Made it, brother," I whispered. The next morning, I walked to the community center where I was assigned for service, a place where other vets came for food, showers, and conversation. No questions asked. Just people, battered and bruised, trying to remember how to be whole. They gave me a broom. Simple. I swept the floor, pushing dust into neat piles, listening to the rhythm of bristles on tile. There was peace in that. Structure. Purpose. I hadn't felt that in years. A few hours later, a younger man came in, maybe 25, maybe less. Eyes darting, shoulders hunched. Same look I used to have. "Coffee's free," I said. He nodded, mumbling thanks, but didn't take any. Just stood there like a deer in an unfamiliar forest. "You got a name?" I asked. "Derek," he muttered. "You served?" "Yeah. 2 tours. Infantry." I reached into my pocket, pulled out a chair. "Sit. You're home." He blinked at the word. Home. Like it was foreign. But he sat. And just like that, something passed between us. Something real. Not a transaction. Not charity. Recognition. Each day after that, I swept. I mopped. I poured coffee. I listened. Old men with broken spines and sharp memories told stories, like campfire legends. Young vets shuffled in with fresh scars and silent mouths. Some had records. Some had children they hadn't seen in years. All had ghosts, and all were welcomed. Miranda checked in from time to time. "You're becoming the backbone of that place," she said during one visit. "I'm just showing up," I replied. She grinned. "That's more than most." She handed me an envelope. "What's this?" "A letter. From Lena." I opened it, hands trembling slightly. Inside, a few simple lines, written in tight, clean cursive. "Dear Dad, I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad you called. There's a lot I don't understand, but I want to. If you're willing, maybe you could visit. Mom said you were a good man once. I'd like to meet him." Lena, I read it twice, then folded it carefully, like a flag. A week later, I stood in front of a small house on the south side. White fence, yellow door, wind chimes whispering in the breeze. Lena answered. She looked like her mother, but the way she stood, firm, cautious, searching, was all me. Neither of us moved at first. Then, "Hi," I said. She nodded. "Hi." A little boy peeked out from behind her leg. Brown-skinned, wild curls, eyes too big for his face. "Who's he?" I asked, pointing gently. "My son," she replied. "Isaiah." I crouched, locking eyes with the boy. "Hey there." He didn't speak, just watched. Then, shyly, "Are you a soldier?" I glanced up at Lena. "Used to be." He stepped forward. "Do you know about helicopters?" I smiled. "Yeah, I know a few things." Lena opened the door wider. "Come in." We were just starting dinner. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and rice. Warm, familiar. There were drawings on the fridge. A chipped coffee mug that read, "Number 1 Teacher." Photos of Isaiah in Halloween costumes. A life. I sat at the table. They passed me plates. We talked. Awkwardly at first. Then, like family. "I kept your letters," Lena said quietly, after Isaiah went to bed. "All of them. Even when I was angry." "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have been there." She nodded. "But you're here now." Later, walking back to the bus stop, I passed a mural. Bright blues and golds and reds. It stretched across a wall like a living memory. At its center, a soldier with his eyes closed, hands lifted skyward, doves taking flight from his palms. Underneath, in bold painted script, "No one returns the same, but every soul deserves a way back." I stared at it for a long time, and I felt whole. Weeks turned into months. I kept sweeping, kept showing up. I even started helping with group therapy, telling my story, not as a victim, but as a voice, a compass for those lost in the fog. Melissa, James wrote again, said her father would have been proud, that she was proud. I framed her letter, hung it beside Kenny's photo. "Guess we're still making it, huh?" I'd say to him sometimes. Still fighting the long war. But now, I was winning it, inch by inch. One spring morning, I stood in a local high school auditorium. Miranda had invited me to speak at a Veterans Day assembly. Kids filled the rows, some yawning, some whispering. But as I stepped up to the podium, something shifted. Didn't read from a script. I just spoke. About choices. About pain. About what it means to be forgotten and then found. I told them I'd lost everything. But not everyone. "I'm not here because I'm special," I said. "I'm here because people didn't give up on me. Because one woman stood in a courtroom and said my name mattered." A long silence followed. Then applause. Loud. Rising. It didn't feel like praise. It felt like release. Afterward, a girl approached. She looked maybe 17. Nervous. "My brother's a Marine," she said. "He's struggling." I didn't know how to help. You just did, I told her. You showed up. She hugged me, and for the first time, I hugged back without flinching. That night, I walked to the river again. Same bench, same city, different man. The stars blinked overhead like signals from old friends. The wind whispered through the trees. I reached into my coat and pulled out the last thing from my duffel. A dog tag. Kenny's. I kissed it. Then I let it go. Watched it sink into the water with barely a splash. A burial. A blessing. A beginning. I'm not a ghost anymore. I'm not a prisoner. I'm not a case file. I'm Nathaniel Carter, a soldier, a father, a man. Home.